Between the two of them. The inside of coats, Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to round 3 of the VRRC BMW M3 Cup here this evening at Oschersleben. There we go, first pronunciation has gone well. Here we are at the 3.7 mile long circuit. That might be kilometre there, I'm already getting confused. And we're only a few seconds into the stream, but welcome. I am your host, Reeve Taylor, for this evening, joined by a very talented young man beside me here, Henry Foote. How are you, Henry?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you very much for VRRC for having me again. Yeah, really looking forward to this one. It looks like it's going to be a great round again.
Yeah, it certainly does. We were just having a chat then about this track. It's certainly going to be a tricky one, but it should mean that it's going to be fun for the 3 races we have this evening for round 3 as well. So just a quick reminder, the first couple of rounds were Sachsenring and Hockenheim ring. Of course, we're in German machinery. We're going to be mainly at the German circuits for this series. Oschersleben for tonight's round, then it's Lausitzring in round 4 next week. Round 5 will be Norisring on the 20th, so a bit of a break there. And then we have Zandvoort for round 6 a week later. The Red Bull Ring and the Nurburgring GP to round off what should be an exciting season there. There you can see the timings at the bottom of the screen as well. And here's our results from the previous rounds. It was Jack Smith who did very well indeed in the previous round at the Hockenheim ring and is currently leading his championship as well. Also doing well in the championship are Eric Axelson and Oliver Gibson. It's Eric currently P2 and then Oliver P3, 53 points to his name. Scott Bugner in the mix there as well. He had a great run actually in the last round. Sorry, I've just realised I've just actually stolen your comms piece there, Rich. Rich, who's running our stream. It's off to a fantastic start, isn't it? How are you, Rich?
I'm okay, mate. You were on such a roll. I just let you crack on. Why interrupt somebody that's on such a roll? So yeah, well done, mate. Anyway, the championship table's up for you now.
Oh yeah, I thought we might have swapped round, but here we go. Here is that championship table that I mentioned. And it is Jack Smith currently leading with 57 points to his name. Eric Axelson, P2, 55. Oliver Gibson, P3, as you've just heard. Scott Bugner running P4, then Josh Martin, P5. Chris Blakey, Lee Piercy, Adam Lyle, and Christian Gillian, and Andy Dorman are top 10. Moving on then, it's Andy Carroll and Paul Laramie, who we're going to hear more for in a little while. And then we have Harry Ormerod in P13, Daniel Heaps P14, Craig Curtis P15. Then we have Olivia Krzyzanowska in P16, Thomas Potter P17, Alex Walker P18, John Jones P19, Kenny Press in 20. Rounding out our running in the championship, it's Sam Walton, Mark Stokes, Andy Phillips, and Nathan Smith. Our 24 drivers currently registered for the championship so far. A look at the championship now. Let's have a look at the track. Oschersleben, it is a fantastic racing circuit, not one that perhaps we're all that familiar with on the British racing circuit, if you will, but it is certainly an interesting one. We got that run down into turn one, quite a long run as well, before we have the two corners that back onto each other. Actually gets to be a little bit tight through the first couple of corners, so driver are going to have to be careful of track limits there for the run towards the end of sector one. We have the chicane as well, another pinch point there where drivers again going to have to be careful of track limits for a greatly named corner there, McDonald's. I like that one. I wonder if someone was hungry while they named it. Big back straight there once again before you run through the Shell curve, the Ammon curve, and then the Bauer curve. Again, pronunciation is going to be completely out the window here. And then the final corner before that long run down this relatively high-speed circuit. So then we've had a quick chat about the circuit. Now let's have a look at how things are going to be looking actually on a track with a bit of a hot lap here for a couple of minutes. And there was an example of a great lap there by Jack Smith. I believe it was with low weight in the car, but that's what the drivers are looking to do, which brings us on to qualifying, actually, where the drivers are going to try and match that time. The drivers are going to have 15 minutes, a little bit less than that to go, to set their fastest lap for the grid for the first race. So let's see how qualifying forms up. The flag drops at qualifying, and so far it is looking good for Scott Bugner so far by the looks of things. Sorry, a bit of pixelation there, so I can't quite make out, but that is Scott Bugner there. We're on board with him at the moment. Of course, doing very well in the championship that I last commentated on, the VRRC Leon Cupra Cup. But he seems to be doing well in the M3s as well. A bit of a different car, but certainly suits his driving style well by the looks of things. Maybe the track suiting him well as well. I believe you've done a few laps around this track, haven't you, Henry? How did you find it out there?
Yeah, I've done a few laps preparing for this, and it's an awesome track. It's very difficult to go quick around here. I was struggling to keep up with the quick guys around here, but I think the main thing is going to be just staying within those track limits. It's going to be super easy to make mistakes. This track rewards a lot of high speed and bravery, but it's really easy to overstep those marks and potentially get some warnings for track limits or penalties for track limits. So it's important to not only stay within the track limits, but go through the corners as quick as you can, and you'll get rewarded for the bravery through those high speed sections.
Yeah, I think the officials are going to be looking at the track limits like a hawk here, because as you say, it's quite easy to make a little small misjudgment, perhaps, just going out the white lines there, just like we might have just seen. I'm not going to lay the blame on anyone, but yeah, very easy to overstep the mark ever so slightly, and a full foul of the will of the stewards there. We're on board with Jack Smith at the moment. He provided a very nice lap for us for the hot lap, by the looks of things, but is currently yet to set a truly quick one in qualifying so far. Has 9 minutes to go in the session, so still plenty of time to get a decent lap in. It looks like he has got a decent lap in so far. Actually goes purple through the first sector, and that was a 28.3 that was, so it was looking to be at least a tenth up on his previous attempt. We don't have any predicted delta. I've been streaming another series recently where I'm used to that, and it's a purple once again through the second sector there, looking like it's going to be a great lap so far for Jack.
Yeah, Jack's put together a really good lap here. As he comes across the line, it'll be really interesting to see where he ends up. I think it looks like he's going to be right up at the top immediately. Let's have a look.
Place your bets, people, as he crosses the line. There it is, a very good lap indeed, and you are spot on, Mr. Foot there. It's a 32.3 as he goes across the line. That is provisional pole at the moment, 0.3 faster than Scott Bogner's previous fastest attempt there. I haven't updated on your screens, folks, but I can tell you it's a 32.3 on board at the moment with Eric Axelson, another driver very successful in the previous championship. I was able to participate in the comms box, and is currently running fairly far down. I say fairly far down. I missed him. He's fourth at the moment. It's 32.8 currently that he's got under his belt. Let's see what he can do as he comes towards the end of this lap. Just about to head on to the back straight here. We head through McDonald's now. It gets a little bit technical here before you have to jump back on to the throttle. Don't want to do it too early in these cars, of course. You've got 320 horsepower being channeled to the rear wheels. Proper bit of German machinery, this. Those of you who know me well know I like a bit of old school German cars, even though they don't often work all that well. But they're working very finely indeed here this evening on our lap drives to enjoy this fantastic racing circuit. Eric actually abandoning this lap now, is going to jump into the bits and collect his thoughts before we head into the final part of qualifying.
Yeah, I think of this soft compounded tyre they'll be running in qualifying, it's really easy to wear it out really quickly, especially on the power around some of these high-speed corners. When you get on the power, if you step out the rear of the car, easy to spin up those rear tyres, heat them up, overheat them, and get a lot of wear on them. So it's potentially just jumping in, getting a fresh set on, and might get back out to get some laps in these latter stages.
It's a catch-22 as well, isn't it? Because you scrub, you get the tyres hot, you lose grip, and then you scrub more, and then you start to slide all over the place. It's a bit of a what would you call it? What's the correct word for that? I don't know. It's completely lost me. I should add I'm getting my racing driver excuse in. Slightly under the weather today, so I'll try my best. I've got every drug under the sun currently in me to see me through this one. We're on board once again with Jack Smith, still leading this session, and goes quicker once again. A purple sector 28.3, ever so slightly quicker still. His best lap being a 32.1, of course, and now about 0.5 of a second quicker than the man in at P2, being Scott Bugner. 6 minutes to go in this session now. And yeah, we are still only at round 3 of this series so far, but there's only 8 rounds all in all, so every lap really in qualifying does count, because it is going to make a very big difference in this race weekend. For a bit of a reminder, folks, the race weekend format is you've got the 50-minute qualifying, and then that leads you into a sprint race 1, which will be an order decided by the qualifying, and then we head into the sprint race 2, which is another short 15-minute race that is decided by the results from the first sprint race. And then you've got the feature race, which is a slightly longer, bit more traditional 25-minute endurance style race, if you will, because the drivers are required to make a mandatory pit stop there, where we will change 4 tyre compounds. And the grid order for that will be decided combined from the results of sprint race 1 and sprint race 2. I think I've got that all right. Sorry, it's a 30-minute feature race. I'm just being told by Rich Hayden there. I couldn't be completely correct. That would be very untraditional of me. Oh, being let off there by Rich. Thank you. I believe Scott Bugner's just had a bit of an incident out on track. His front wing looks to be completely missing, according to the damage indicators. He's back underway, which is the main thing. At this stage in qualifying, you don't want to be kind of losing all your momentum. The front wing there is going to be less than ideal. Maybe a bit of understeer creeping in a result of that, so it could help. Who knows? I'm not. There's a reason I'm talking about it and not driving it, let's just say. Aboard at the moment with Oliver Gibson, who's just posted a personal best through the first sector, 28.4. His best lap so far, 32.7, so he's very much in the mix, currently running in P3 ahead of Mr. Eric Axelsen there, and nipping at the heels of Scott Bugner as well. It might be looking pretty safe for provisional pole at the moment, but the fight for P2, P3 and P4 is going to be very close indeed. And really it is anyone's game, as Oliver does go purple through the second sector to 40.1 there. You've got a nice long run down to turn 1 at this track, compared to, say, your more traditional British touring car circuit, for example. So it's going to be very important to get a good launch here, even if you don't maybe necessarily qualify in P1 or P2. If you're on the second row, you're still very much in the mix here, as he comes across the line, goes slightly slow through the third sector, but does at least jump into P2. So it is front row at the moment for Oliver Gibson at 32.4 on that previous lap.
Yeah, really solid lap from Oliver Gibson. I think he's potentially got a bit more pace in there of that slow sector 3. So if he can make some more improvements, he could start to challenge Jack Smith as well, which could get interesting in these later stages. It'll be interesting to see if some of the other drivers behind, like Bugner and Axelsen, might improve a bit as well in these later laps as well.
Indeed, yeah, 3 minutes to go on the clock now, which doesn't mean really you've got too much time left. Maybe if you're out there and you've looked after your tyres well enough, you can still get some decent laps in. But if you're still in the pit, you've realistically only got 1 solid attempt by the time you've warmed the tyres up, gone for your fast lap and recovered, shall we say. But it's yeah, so it's make it or break it really for these drivers now. Chris Blakey is currently running in P5. We're on board with him. His fastest lap so far, 32.9 according to the timing system. So still a very good time indeed. If we do ignore Jack Smith, who is absolutely flying along at the moment, or at least was, there is nothing really between so many of these drivers now. I didn't get to catch much of what went on in practice, but if it was looking this close, it means we're going to be on for some great racing this evening. We go on board with Josh Martin. Josh Martin currently running in P8. It's a 33.2 is his best lap. He has gone personal best, though, through that first sector. Loses out ever so slightly by the second, but maybe he can claw it back as we head into the third. As you say, Henry, some very heavy braking zones here. The track does reward bravery, and now maybe late on into the session, you just kind of think, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. I might put it in a wall, but at least I've tried.
Yeah, some of these drivers might start taking more risks now, as we see Jack Smith go purple in sector 2. So, like you were saying, he's pushing a bit harder now coming into his last stages, because he knows that he's got to get a lap in, although he's quite comfortably in the lead. But drivers behind could still improve. There's enough time for about 1 more lap now, so you never know what could happen.
We just cut away from Josh Martin there as he was having a bit of a tank slapper, so if he caught that, well done to him. I suppose it's a little bit easier to catch a bit of a slide in a rear-wheel drive car than it might be in let's say, the front-wheel drive cars that you're used to, Henry.
I think it's actually the opposite way around. In a front-wheel drive car, if you're used to it, it's super easy to slam on the throttle and point the car where you want to go. In a rear-wheel drive car, it's a lot about that throttle control, or potentially even coming off of it. And that's one of the things some of these drivers that might be used to a front-wheel drive car have to adjust to a bit more, because it's such a difference between the two cars, and it's a lot to adapt to.
Yeah, exactly. It could just well be, A, I'm a poor driver, which is very much the case, and B, as well, my front-wheel drive cars are a bit slow, so that's why the whole weld your foot in the throttle thing doesn't really work all that well. As Lee Pearce, he's recovering from a bit of an incident here. Looks to be back underway though, which is the most important thing. He won't really have a chance to get a fast lap in now unless, where was he, out on track? Let's see. Actually, he should be just about fine if he's got underway, because he still had 20 seconds left on the clock as he crossed the line. They're on board with Chris Blakey once again. Hasn't improved from his previous best attempt. About 8 laps into this qualifying session, and now 8 fast laps at least. Jack Smith still out in front and still setting some very consistent times. His last lap's 32.2, so if he had yet to set provisional pole, he would have done it again on that last lap, so he's looking good. But Oliver Gibson is catching with that 32.3. The timer does hit 0 seconds now. The flag has been waved as some of the drivers now bring their qualifying session to an end. Next, let's see who comes across the line. It will be Mr. Heaps. He comes across the line, still on board with Chris Blakey. Where is he heading through now? He is just about to head through. I've actually lost him out on track. We go on board with Thomas Potter though. Thomas in the black and green liveried car. He is just about to head into the penultimate corner. Has a bit of company here, gets out of the way very courteously there. Decides he's not going to improve on this lap, so he's going to let his competitors have a go at it now as we go on board with Scott Bugner. Brings his qualifying session to an end. It's looking rather good for Jack Smith, it must be said. As up next to come across the line, we've got Eric Axon actually diving into the pits behind as well. So a few drivers abandoning this lap. Make that another one as well for Oliver Gibson as well. So it looks to be the fast laps aren't going to be coming at the very end of the session here, Henry.
Yeah, I think everything's done and dusted for everyone now, and I think this is what we're going to see in the race. And I think Jack Smith looks like a very strong force. With the consistency we've seen with some of these laps, I think it's going to be really difficult for the others to catch him, but it's not impossible. We'll have to see. And the reverse grizz will obviously make things interesting as well going into the later races today.
Great drift there by Daniel Heaps. So now we've kind of come to the end of the proper fast laps, but there's some great drifting anyway. So that brings an end to qualifying. We've got a 15-minute sprint race coming up next, but in the meantime, we can have a quick message from our sponsors before we get ready on the grid once again. And a thank you, Evnia, for their support once again. So that does bring an end to qualifying, but also gives a chance to chat to some more drivers taking part in qualifying. Mr. Jack Smith, of course, takes pole in that session and now joins us in the comms box. Jack, congratulations on pole, first of all. Feel like there was anything left on the table there?
Yeah, a little bit. I think I went a little bit faster in practice, but it's not much. It's like maybe, a millimeter over the line difference, but yeah, it's pretty on there. It's pretty nailed lap. So yeah, I'm really happy. I'm feeling really connected to the car in this round. So yeah, I'm on the limit of oversteering nearly every single corner, and somehow have the feeling in the wheel to sort of counter that. So yeah, it's feeling really good. So yeah, I just need to translate that into the next sessions.
That's what we like to hear. Is this just a car that you really enjoy driving, or do you feel like this car and track combination is working well for you this weekend in particular?
The car, for sure, yeah. I really like this car, and the combination, it's strange. The last championship, I really didn't gel with this track, but we've gone to the moto layout for this one, and in this car, it just seems to work with me for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but yeah, it seems to be working really well. I drove an E36 in real life, and it does feel vaguely similar. So yeah, that probably does play a role in it, but yeah, for sure, I'm feeling pretty confident going into the race that I can maybe hold on to the lead, pull a little gap, and hopefully we can get the win in race 1, and maybe transfer it into race 2 as well. So we'll have to see how that works out.
Fantastic stuff. I have to say, it must be the race leads heading into turn 1 that you're gunning for, really, isn't it? Especially with such a strong result in qualifying.
Yeah, for sure. It's just the starts that I struggle with, really. Ollie behind me gets, on average, better starts than what I do. So, yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on him on the start, but I'm not actually sure which side I actually start on. So I'm hoping I have the inside coming into turn 2, because that'll just play into my hands, really. So that's what I'm hoping for. If not, then I'll have to pull some funky maneuvers to try and keep him behind me. But yeah, I'm sure it'd be really good racing for you guys in the comms booth.
Have you had much chance to do any race runs, really, for this session, or has it just been a case of see what you can do in terms of hot laps and gain a bit more experience on the track?
Yeah, I've did a full sprint race run, which is all I thought I really needed to do. I tested out the medium tyre, tested out the soft tyre. The soft seems to just hang on to the end of the race, so that's pretty much all I needed for, because the mediums, they lack the raw pace that the softs do, but obviously they last a bit longer. So come the feature race, there may be a better tyre to be on towards, maybe even the start of the race, and then going to the softs in the feature. But yeah, for the sprint, I'm just focusing on softs, trying to nurse them in the opening stages, so I can have a bit of a better tyre towards the end, and yeah, trying to defend that win. So yeah, that's my strategy, really, just trying to keep the tyres under control.
Well, Jack, I wish you the very best of luck in that. I'm going to let you get away now and get ready for that sprint race coming up in just a moment. And congratulations once again on pole and qualifying.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, nice to meet you.
So we've heard from our man on pole, who's been enjoying some virtual racing in some BMW machinery. But now let's have a quick chat with someone who's been driving some BMWs in real life. We're joined by Mr. Paul Laramie this evening. Not able to race with us tonight, unfortunately, because he's got an injured back. So do get well soon on that front. But how are you otherwise, Paul?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good evening. Good to meet you. Yeah, all right, thanks. Bit of a bad back. I had quite a busy weekend racing at Silverstone. We had the Burkett Relay on the Saturday, which got a 6-hour team relay, and a championship event on the Sunday. So, yeah, quite busy time.
Yeah, very much so. It's a 6-hour-long race, that, isn't it, the Burkett Relay?
Yeah, so it's a 6-hour team relay. So it's the full Silverstone GP circuit. There's 70 teams, so there's about 300 cars in total across all the teams. And teams can range from, I think it's 3 drivers and 2 cars, all the way up to, I think it's 6 drivers and 6 cars in a team. And the idea is, it's like a relay race where in our team we had 3 drivers, we had 3 cars, so we were doing 2 one-hour stints each. So you go out for your stint, and as you drive in the pit lane, your teammate pulls out behind you, you go to the back of the pits and they drive out on track, so you don't actually stop and do a pit stop as such, you just kind of hand the baton over and they take on the race, and it's a full 6 hour. And it's done on a scratch race for the outright speed, and then it's on a handicap race, because you can imagine you've got cars from radicals to BMWs to NASCARs that we had at the weekend.
Oh, fantastic stuff. That sounds particularly interesting. Carl, you were driving, unless I'm mistaken, was a 325 Ti compact, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a slightly modified 330 compact. It was originally a 325.
Nice. Oh,
It's now a 330 compact, limit slip diff, so it runs in what we call Class 6 in our championship racing, which has a bit more modification, but it's a good little fun car. It's got enough power to have some fun. I think we were 26th on the scratch race overall at the 70, so it's not a slow coach, but it's not the fastest thing out there.
yeah, I used to have a E46 330 myself, and the good little bits of kit. You were second in class, weren't you, overall, after that event with Colin Turkington and Adam Morgan?
Yes, yeah, I had a couple of good teammates. Definitely got a bit of experience between them. Yes, we were challenging all the way through. We were right up there on the podium. We got second. We won Class B in the handicap, and we were, I think, 3rd overall in the handicap race. So yeah, great day. Colin and Adam were fantastic. They really put every effort in and drove to see the pace they got out of the, because they were in standard 325 Ti's pretty much, and the pace they got out of those cars was phenomenal.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, really good to see.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Remind us the team name again?
So it was Team BMW that we used on Saturday. I actually raced normally under the BMW Car Club Racing, under the 750 Motor Club.
Right, okay.
And we have a championship round, which I clinched third in class in the overall championship.
Paul,
Pretty
it's Rich. Did you manage to convince Adam and Colin to come and race with us on Wednesday?
we spoke about it. We know Colin has a sim and plays at AC, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
it was quite interesting actually. I had a quick chat with him, and I asked him, you were there, Paul, but I mean for everybody else, I asked him which sim he liked to use, and he's very much an Assetto Corsa man.
Yep.
Good, I believe it's the correct way to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. But yeah, it was a cracking experience, a lot of fun. Busy day, you can imagine, but
Yeah.
So the other BMW driving at the moment is this lovely, also kind of retro cool E36 M3. How are you enjoying this championship so far?
I'm really enjoying it. It is a really good fun car to drive. I think it's the closest thing I think we've used that's been near to what we drive in the real life. It's got a good balance of grip, but also it can slide and get a bit of fun with it. So overall, I think it's a cracking car. I think the team are doing, Rich and the team are doing a great job setting it up and making it drive as it does. So we've got a few of the BMW CTR drivers in the championship, the likes of Chris Blakey, Sam Walton, Lee Piercy, he's a previous BMW CTR champion, and Andy Phillips, who's recently joined us. So there's a few of us from the championship racing in the sim.
Oh, no excuses then. Are you rooting for those guys in your own absence this evening?
Yeah, well, Chris is my teammate with automatic racing in the sim. It's fair to say we have quite good battles on track as well as in the sim, which is apart from he's going a bit quick at the moment, so we need to slow him down a bit. But
you have made great progress with us though throughout the years. Do you find that those skills transfer into your real racing as well?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I found was, obviously I only started racing myself in real life 6 years ago, so I've not got a massive background career in racing. I started a bit later on. I think car positioning, the mindset of when you're attacking, defend, what decision making you have on the racetrack, and then they're all absolutely transferable across into the real racing. And you don't get a lot of seat time when you're real racing unless you're testing all the time. So being able to jump in the sim and constantly hone those skills is important.
Excellent stuff. And just quickly now, as we're not too far away from the get-go on the race, but when can we expect to see you in the car again? Will you be back next week?
Yeah, I should be back next week. Give it a bit of rest this week, but I should be back in the car next week, I'd have thought.
Fantastic stuff, Paul. Well, do get well soon. Thank you very much for talking with us this evening. Fascinating stuff to hear. And, yep, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening. We'll speak soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
So this leads us on now into the first sprint race of the evening. For a reminder, this will be the only race that is the grid is determined from the qualifying session that we've just had. It is just over 30 seconds now until lights out, and we've got Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson on the front row, followed by Scott Bugner and Eric Axelson. Chris Blakey are top 5. Any thoughts or predictions, Henry, for the runner into the first corner?
I think if Jack can nail this start, I think he's, with the pace we've seen from him, even with the ballast, I think he will potentially be able to run away. But it'll be interesting to see if another driver can get ahead, whether they'll be able to hang on to the lead and defend for pretty much the entire race. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one, for sure.
Let's see. Yeah, he seems certainly confident in the car, but let's see if that confidence pays dividends now, as we do in fact have 6 red lights on the gantry. The revs rise and the drivers are away for race 1 here this evening at Oschersleben. It is a good start for Oliver Gibson there. He moves over to the right to defend from Scott Bugner. That long run down into the first corner. Jack Smith, our leader in qualifying, leads the race so far. There's a bit of a contact, bit of argy-bargy in the midfield there, but everyone else seems to be getting away relatively cleanly, all things considered. Jack Smith leads from Oliver Gibson, then Scott Bugner is in a very uncomfortable position here. Does he go for Oliver Gibson, or does he defend from Eric Axelson just behind there? These top 4 seem to be breaking away just a little bit now as we head through the third corner. Once again, too quick to even try to pronounce it at this point in time. 15 minutes of this race to go, then a bit of pressure being applied on Lee Piercy from Daniel Heaps here. Having a brief look, can he fit the car around the outside? No, he can't. Bit of a pinch point coming up in just a moment, so he's going to have to back out of it unless he tries anything particularly brave. He will. He goes down the inside there. The door open for him ever so slightly, and he sees his opportunity. A bit of contact there, a bit more contact there in return, and that is not where you want your race to start there. Very well avoided by Andy Dorman behind there. That could have got very messy indeed as we head onto the back straight once again. A bit of a braking zone coming up here, pretty heavy braking zone in fact, so we could see a few of these packs being broken up as a bit of a gap here that Daniel Heaps is in a bit of clean air, and then we've got some more action going on in the upper midfield here. Big gaggle of cars actually.
Yeah, some super battles going on in the midfield. As you see, the drivers in the midfield are relatively close in terms of pace, and there's the drivers at the front as well. They're also close to pace, so you come up with these lots of little packs within the racing, and what we're going to see here is throughout the race, as the gaps evolve, there's going to be lots of little battles going on, and this is just a great start to the race, and hopefully they can keep it clean from here on.
You do not envy Christian at the moment as he loses it a little bit under the braking zone into the first corner. The back end not quite compliant enough for him. It sticks out. He does very well to catch it, but unfortunately has lost track position as a result. That allows Lee Pearcey through. Andy Dorman fancies his chances, I assume. All the meanwhile, Jack Smith out in front leads this race by 1.2 seconds. He is having a great time of it. Christian seems to be a little bit less comfortable at the moment. Just behind is Adam Lyle as well, also almost copying him on the run-off of the exit of the corner. There goes into the grass ever so slightly. It will punish you in these quite lightweight rear-wheel drive cars. And this is a traditional circuit as well. No massive tarmac runoffs. It's all just lots of gravel and grass to really tell you off if you go too wide and too deep into the corner. Drivers attacking these curbs in these comparatively long wheelbase cars, given the relative size of them. They're fairly long wheelbase. And they all make it through cleanly there. Now, that is one area of the track where the drivers have been told to be cautious of the track limits. Ideally, we want to see as much of the car as possible within the white lines, but drivers, of course, are going to try and push that as much as possible in order to gain position in this race.
Yeah, I think the reason why we saw Christian Gillian struggling a bit there is it looks like he's on the medium tyre from what I can see. So he's potentially going to be struggling in these early laps and hoping to get a bit of a benefit in those later laps, but he just needs to hang on for the moment and try and stick where he is, because with that medium tyre, it's going to be quite difficult to get the heat in it for one, and I think that's why we saw him going wide in the early laps of this race.
Very good observation there, Henry. As you say, starting on that medium tyre, it will be difficult to start. It could pay massive rewards later on, though, so we'll see. Maybe, would you say in this 15-minute race, could that have such a benefit, or would it something you focus on more in the feature race?
I'm not too sure. Jack Smith said that the soft tyre was potentially going to hang on just enough for these sprint races, but he's in a comfortable position out front where he can sit back and defend because he's got the pace, he's got the gap behind him as well now, where he can just ease off a small bit on his pace and just focus on saving the tyres, whereas the guys in the midfield will be going at it the entire race trying to hold position. So that medium tyre could come back to Gillian later on. We'll just have to see, because at the moment I think it's just going to be a bit of a disadvantage at the start. So I'm not sure if it will be enough to come back, but yeah, we'll have to see.
As you say, Jack Smith in a very comfortable position at the moment, leading this race by 2 seconds now, closing down ever so slightly as Oliver tries to push on. Best lap so far for Jack, so 1:32.5. That would see him on the first few rows in qualifying, so that is a really strong lap early on from Jack Smith. And if he does have more in the tank, as you say, that is just goes to show why he currently leads this championship. Had a great few races in the previous weekend's worth of racing. I know my previous commentator in this series wouldn't like me to call it a race weekend, but I'm going to call it a race weekend. It might happen on Wednesday, but it's a race weekend in my eyes. We're on board with Thomas Potter at the moment. He's in the midst of battle as well. He's looking to close up on Andy Dorman, and now we're seeing this battle in front of him with Christian and Andy could reap massive rewards for him, really. As if these two get caught up in the midst of battle, start to slow each other down, Thomas Potter is going to be ready to capitalise upon that and gain a couple of positions here for some really important points in this championship. Early days, so every round can make a huge difference in the championship standings. As you go inside the car with Andy Dorman, a bit of understeer potentially creeping in there, but looking very responsive. Otherwise, these cars look like an absolute joy to drive. I am ashamed to say I haven't actually had the chance to get in the car myself. There's a bit of opposite lock being applied there just to bring the back of the car into line as he tries to push as much as possible over the curb there. Yeah, this car looks like a wonderful thing to drive. It's part of the great variety of cars on offer here in the VRRC. I even heard mention before in the drives bringing off some NASCARs. Now that will be interesting.
Yeah, I'll just come in on that. We have Oliver Gibson is a huge NASCAR fan, and you know what, I love the racing as well. So we keep trying to do a NASCAR series on Oval. So I've laid a challenge down to Oliver to come up with a format, and we'll see if we can do something on it.
That would be very interesting. So do stay tuned into everything VRRC to find out more about that. We're on board at the moment with Eric Axel. So the last time I saw Eric, he was well, basically just asleep at the front of a race at the wheel of a Leon Cooper. He was going so well in that championship, and now he's got a bit more work to do by the looks of things. Scott Bugner is currently the man in front of him, and this is an important position. The fight for the podium in this race, about a second separate these two drivers at the moment before we run into the fourth corner on the track, and that gap looking like it's closing down just a little bit now as he gets closer through the run towards the McDonald's corner. I'm very confused by that corner name. It seems to be everything else is very German and very proper, and then we just got McDonald's. I'd love to know the history behind that one. A shame to say I haven't done the research myself there. But in terms of their pace at the moment, Scott Bugner 33.3 on that last lap, so they are very close indeed. Eric does close up as he sets a few personal bests. And in terms of their best lap as well, Scott Bugner wins out just ever so slightly, but they are so close in terms of their pace at the moment. Side by side, also very close indeed is Andy Dorman and Christian Gillian there. And a nice, well, I was about to say easy move there, but a nice move by Andy Dorman to just about get in front, but certainly did not give up without a fight, did Christian there. And I suspect he's going to try and fight back for a bit more, or is Thomas Potter going to try and seize the moment to pick up another position here? Let's see, as we are already past the halfway mark, half race distance in this 15-minute sprint race.
Yeah, it still looks like Christian Gillian might be struggling on those mediums. Even halfway through the race, it looks like they might still just not have the same edge that the soft tyre has. And it looks like he's just slowly dropping back. I mean, at the end, it might come back to him, but it just looks like it's just that little bit each corner, which means the guys on the soft tyres are just able to stick with him and just follow him through every corner and onto the main straights, get that toe they need to get ahead.
Yeah, and there's certainly going to be a little bit of toe here with those big kind of barn door rear wings, those LTW-style rear wings on this E36 M3, and 320 horsepower as well. There's going to be some decent speeds involved here. Perhaps that could be a reason maybe as to why the tyres are quite warming up quite so quickly. They've got a few seconds to kind of breathe almost, haven't they, as they head down those long straights.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the high-speed nature of this track would be why we'd think the mediums would come in, especially with a lot of that front scrub through some of these corners. But like you said, these long straights as well mean there's an opportunity for the tyres to cool down. It's potentially saving the soft tyres and meaning that the medium tyre just might not be enough for this race.
Will be good to hear from the drivers in a few moments to get their thoughts on how the tyres are looking. But there's been a slight bit of contact, I believe, between Andy Dorman and Christian Gillian. Not being major though, so they are able to continue on. We're on board at the moment with Eric Axelsen as he is still embroiled in this battle with Scott Bugner. Scott Bugner, of course, having a great run of it last time out, and is, I am sure, not thinking about last time out at all at the moment. He's thinking about what's in his rear view mirror, because it is a bit of a scary sight to have an Eric Axelsen completely occupying the rear view of your car. He's a formidable opponent, is Eric Axelsen, and so is Scott Bugner, to be fair. So we're in for a great battle here as we run into turn 4 once again. Very well defended by Scott Bugner. Is just about positioning the car perfectly to almost give the impression that there's going to be a car's width pass, but he's quite quickly closing the door on that. Well, it's very fair racing so far, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And Eric Axelsen's doing everything he can just to fill up the mirrors of Scott Bugner, so he knows he's there, and he's just trying to put the pressure on a little bit each lap. And as you can see, it's getting Scott Bugner into a place where he's more likely to make these mistakes and more likely to just let Eric Axelsen that car's width he needs to get through. And Eric can tell he's quicker at this stage. He knows that he's got to push and try and get past, so it's going to be really interesting to see as he tries to, again, fill up those mirrors potentially, but also, you see, pressuring him into a mistake. I wonder what could happen here.
Let's see, as that pressure has caused him to crack, as you were alluding to there, and that's brought Eric Axelsen right back into play. He's going to stay in the slipstream of Scott Bugner. Has a bit of a threat of a look around the outside. He's going to go for it by the looks of things. He is a car length back, though. Can he make it stick? He tries his best. There might have been a tiny bit of contact there, and now has the inside for the second corner. It is going to be Eric Axelsen with a nose out in front. He backs out of it, though. He doesn't want to get too caught up in it, but instead, it seems to be Scott Bugner runs a little bit wide, gives Eric Axelsen the corner. It's now Eric Axelsen up into P3, Scott Bugner P4, and Chris Blakey now still feeling like he's very much on for a good result here. Might even have a shout at the podium in the final few minutes of this race.
Yeah, exactly. Their battling has brought Chris Blakey right back into this. I mean, he was a fair bit back, but now the more these guys fight, the more he's going to get back into it. And you see he's got the headlights on, all these little distraction techniques to try and get the drivers in front to be a little bit more distracted and more likely to get a car's width out and make some mistakes. But again, might be some more battling coming up here, which could open the door for him to potentially make a move in these later stages.
Let's see now as we run down the long back straight. Heavy braking zone here where you can get a move in, can get a nose in somewhere if you're particularly brave enough. I do get the feeling Scott Bugner was a little bit too far back to make anything stick there. But he's going to try later on in the lap, I suspect, though, because where it all went wrong for Scott just a few moments ago, it could go wrong for Eric once again. These three are very close indeed. It is anyone's game here. Do not count Chris Blakey out in this one, as we see Scott now diving into that slipstream just as Eric did on the previous lap. The inside might be well defended here, so a move around the outside might be his only opportunity. No, instead, it's going to be clean running through that first corner. Bit of a kiss at the curb, but nothing too major in terms of events going on through that corner. Let's see as we head later into sector one. Now, the switchback corners, as I like to call them, can offer some overtaking opportunities as well, but well defended from our front runner in this battle once again.
Yeah, Scott Bugner's in a difficult situation here where he's got to look both ahead and in his mirrors, because you've got a driver ahead who you know is quick but you're trying to get past, but you've also got Chris Blakey behind, just right there. He's been looming behind the entire race, and he knows that if he makes one mistake in his pass, if he goes for a pass in the wrong place and loses time, he's going to get pounced on. And that's why it's such a difficult situation, because he's going to be... But here in this situation, actually, though, it looks like he's closing in enough, and potentially he's pulling away from behind, so he might be able to get that out of his head, the car behind. But you can always see in your mirrors, especially when a car's got his headlights on, and what that's just going to do is it's going to just be there in the back of his mind, knowing that if he makes that mistake with the overtake, it could potentially end up with losing a position instead of gaining one. So that's why it's quite difficult for him in this situation at the moment.
Has been a mighty effort from these three drivers, though, for the first 15 minutes of this race. They've been completely attached to each other, it seems. They've done very well to be so consistent in this racing. We've seen the headlights now being turned on pretty much on cue, Henry, so what the that one, as he now tries a bit more of an intimidation tactic, as does Scott Bugner. I should note to those of you watching at home, thank you very much for tuning in. You might have seen the timing tower on the left-hand corner there showing that these drivers are fighting for 17th. That's not the case. This is the battle for the podium in this race, the last spot on the podium. This is the fight for P3. Eric currently running in P3. And these drivers, I must say, fair play to them. They are still lapping very well, very strongly indeed. They are still in the mid-33s this late on into the race. Despite this battling, they are able to push forward and aren't losing out too much, really. So a very good effort from the three fighting for the podium here.
Yeah, they're just managing to stick with the same sort of times as Daniel Heaps behind, which means they're not in too much of a threat. So in this last lap, they can battle it out. But as we cut back to the leader, Jack Smith, he's just got a massive gap. He's completely dominating the race. And I think he's just managed to do what he was going to tell us he was going to do in the interview. He's managed to get the laps together each lap, and he's lapping consistently the quickest, and he's got a safe gap in the lead. So I think he's sealed it, but battle for third is still definitely on.
And the timer does hit 0 as well. We're on board with the aforementioned Jack Smith. And let's see as he heads around the final corner now. Feel like a bit of a celebration almost. It's been a great drive for him as we're on board with Jack Smith. Still by looks of the camera changing very quickly. We're on board with Chris Blakey now as we see that the front running pack now starting the final lap of this race. on board with number 60 car, so I'm no longer familiar with the driver numbers, I must say. It's been a little break, and I've now started to forget them now. We are heading down the back straight. This is Lee Piercy, actually, we're on board with at the moment. This, of course, an important race. It will, of course, obviously for championship points, but not only that, but also the deciding factor of the grid for the upcoming sprint race as well. We seem to have a few cars going slowly here. Quite sure what... Oh, they finished the race there. Sorry, it's I am very sorry. I've just been informed in my ear that we have actually finished the race. Didn't quite catch that. I'm going to blame that on the lack of timing tower. That's what I'm going to blame it on. So we're going to go to an advert now. So a message from our sponsors as we move on from the rather tumultuous end to race 1. Thank you. And that brings an end to race 1 there. Slightly confusing end, but an end nonetheless. So now we have a bit of a chance to chat to some of our drivers. Our top 3 from that race are Eric Axelsen, Oliver Gibson, and Jack Smith. So we're going to have a quick chat with those guys. Now, up first, it is Eric Axelsen in P3 in the end after that fantastic battle. Congratulations, Eric. Another podium to add to your roster. Talk us through your race. Must be pleased with that one.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good race. Didn't have too much practice, to be honest, which is a shame because I really like the track. But yeah, I had a good race. Very, very clean racing with Scott. It didn't happen that much, to be honest. It was just one opportunity for an overtake, and yeah, it went well.
Going to say, yeah, in that case, you certainly seized on it. Is this a track that you've got much experience with?
No, not to be honest. I just like loaded it in, tried it out, and I really I like it. But this is my first race on it. So yeah, that was fun. I really like it.
Yeah, you seem to be going well there. Do you feel like the track and the car worked well? Are you enjoying driving this car so far this season? Sorry, it's my first time to catch up with you since the lay-on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really like the car. I think might not be as fast as in a rear-wheel drive as I'm in front-wheel drive. And also when you down such a long championship in a front-wheel drive, it's hard to like, you have to like rewire your brain a bit. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a great car. It's really fun to drive.
Good stuff. So you should enjoy driving it in the next race coming up. Then that next race, of course, being the second sprint race. You set yourself up for it, of course, with a good result in race 1. Have you taken any lessons from the first race then that you're going to be moving on into the second?
I mean, just try to take it easy. That turn 1 on this track, I think it can be interesting in a reverse grid. So I'll just try to stay calm and stay on track for the first corners.
Sometimes the best way to go about it, isn't it? So, what are your hopes for this race then? Of course, we've already got a podium under your belt. You're hoping to maybe try and push on a little bit further, maybe go for those race wins early on. Or is it just a case of, as you say, pick up rubber and kind of see what happens, bring it home.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not, always trying to end up as high as possible. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's a hard track to pass on as well, and a lot of quick drivers ahead of me. So yeah, I'll just I'm gonna do my best. See what it makes.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in that, Eric. Congratulations on a podium once again in race 1, our first sprint race, and all the best for that second sprint race, as I say. So that brings us on to the second man on the podium, P2 then, and that is Oliver Gibson. Congratulations, Oliver, for P2 in the first sprint race. It looked good in qualifying, but it arguably looked even better in the race. Talk us through your race.
Yeah, cheers. The start wasn't great. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get into a rhythm, I think. And so I was looking up at Scott and I was like, I need to keep him behind. And then I looked forwards and Jack was gone. So I was like, oh, there goes my my win. But yeah, it was just head down after that. I made a few silly mistakes and cooked my tyres a bit. So I've changed the pressures around a little bit. I changed the pressures sort of at the start of that race. And I was like, might pay off, bit of a risk. And clearly it didn't, so I've gone back to it, my old tyre pressures, so should see how this one goes. Just got to get through the pack this time.
And speaking of those tyres, well, obviously everyone, for the most part, stayed on the softs in race 1. Do you feel like they, I know you said you had a couple of issues, but do you feel like for this second sprint race, do you think the soft will just about hold on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it was just my driving was destroying them. I was sliding a bit all over the place, and it was just the front tires went, compared to like the previous 2 rounds. It was sort of just one side that went, and it was the front tires for me this week. So who knows what that was? I think it genuinely was just me. So I'm hoping this race, get involved some battles, should slow it down. Obviously, you might use more tyre wear in battles, but I should be a lot slower coming through the pack. So just fingers crossed these tyres hold on and I'm not sliding around towards the end.
Yeah, it looks good for us on the stream, I must say, all that sliding around, but I imagine for you guys it's a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, a little bit.
Are you getting on this car well? Is a rear-wheel drive high-power car something that you're a bit more comfortable in?
Oh yeah, I cannot drive front-wheel drive at all. So it's like, whenever that gets announced, I'm like, right, I might have to sit this one out. So, but yeah, rear-wheel drive is for me. I do prefer the higher downforce, but this one's just about good enough for me. So yeah, I actually really enjoy this car. We did this track in the 1 series a few series back, and that was a bit of a handful, I think. A bit slidey, whereas I know obviously I said this one's a bit slidey, but that was a lot slidey. This one just feels a little bit more planted and a bit more power on the straights, just no push to pass, which makes the overtaking a little bit difficult, but it also makes it look a bit better. So
yeah, you can't complain about lack of push to pass on nearing 30-year-old machinery now. It's a glorified, pretty much a classic, this thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then, as we head into that second sprint race, are you glad to be doing that? Are you enjoying this circuit so far, would you say?
Yeah, it's quite fun. I didn't obviously get much racing in that previous race, so interesting to see what this one does. But when we did this in the 1 series, the first corner was a little bit different. It was a lot tighter. So this one is obviously, it's a downshift and into the corner really, and so that one's going to be interesting, especially on this start, because I was quite lucky that me and Jack and Scott all sort of got the similar start on that last one. So we'll see what happens here. I'm just aiming to get through it really. Hopefully not have any calamities or spins, because that makes my job a lot more difficult.
And finally, before we let you go, do you feel like, I know you're saying you don't want to be too outrageous, don't want to have too many incidents, do you feel like with your pace that you saw in qualifying, you do have something to match Jack Smith and should be able to fight for it?
I think so, as long as I keep him, I can see him just there in my mirror, so if I can just keep him there, that'll be spot on. But I have a feeling he's just going to rocket past, but I'll try my best, and I think we'll probably work together here as we usually do in these races, race 2 and race 3. So but then after that, I think it's game on really.
That's what we like to hear, and that will be certainly great viewing no matter what happens in the race. So thank you very much for your time, Oliver. Best of luck for the upcoming races. Oliver Gibson, P2 there.
Cheers.
So that leaves us with the man who took away the real silverware, the top step of the podium. Jack Smith did a great job in qualifying and a great job in the first race as well. Was it fun out there, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it's as fun as not racing anyone can get, really. It was just quality laps every lap. Yeah, no, when you're leading in the front, you obviously want to win the race as much as you can, but, you know, you look in the mirror and you see everyone racing, you're sort of like, I want to get involved, but, you know, it's a race. I've got to try my best to win it. So, yeah, but fortunately in race 2, we've got a few people in front of me, so, yeah, we can get my head down, getting some racing, which I'm looking forward to, so, yeah, that should be good.
Yeah, it's all well and good saying you wish you were taking part in the racing, but it's only when you see them in the rearview mirror sometimes spinning around or having a bit of an excursion you realise, oh, actually, you know what? It's quite comfy out in front of you.
Yeah, that is very true, actually. Yeah, I'm going to have to make sure I keep out of that in race 2 for sure. But yeah, you make a very valid point there, to be fair.
And it was a decent margin. From fairly early on, we saw you gained a couple of seconds. Was it all just in a decent launch and then just being able to keep a cool head, really?
Yeah, pretty much. I just sort of, well, I got a uncharacteristically good start, so I don't know where that came from. We changed the gear ratios a bit for this race, so it might be in that. And yeah, I think my clutch usage at the start is just a bit abysmal. So yeah, so I got away with that. Luckily, I think Ollie got caught out with that as well, which is why the roles have reversed for this round. So, but yeah, yeah, the track I just sort of get into a rhythm so quickly with it. It's a bit silly, really, but yeah, I just sort of immediately by turn 1 was back into that rhythm again, and yeah, I just drove like I normally would, really, for qualifying. And yeah, we ended up. I looked down at the real time every now and then, and it kept going up about half a second, and I was a bit confused, thinking if I not put like race fuel in or something. But yeah, that's just what my pace was, and you know, it surprises me as much as it surprises other people. So yeah, not really sure what's going on, but something must be clicking.
And you say you're able to keep those qualifying runs going throughout the race. You're on the soft compound tyre. Do you feel like that you can make the soft last till the end, no problems?
Yeah, we'll be behind in a reverse grid. You're going to go a bit slower, so as long as we don't have any mishaps, I think the tyres should last a little bit better in race 2 than it did in race 1. So yeah, just got to keep an eye on it, make sure we're not, you know, getting any silly oversteer that we shouldn't be having, and yeah, just keep the tyres in check. That's basically what I did for race 1, and I think we ended the race with just one tyre getting into that little zone where it can be a bit iffy. But yeah, just need to do the same for race 2.
Well, best luck on that front, Jack. Congratulations once again. I'm going to have to let you go now. It's not long until the start of race 2, but there's our race 1 victor. Best luck for the upcoming races, Jack.
Thank you very much.
So we've heard from our drivers now. Now it's a chance to get ready to watch them participate in some racing action once again, as we have sprint race 2 coming up just under 30 seconds until lights out. And here we have our drivers on the grid. It is Andy Dorman, Thomas Potter on the front row, and then we have Christian Gillian, Lee Piercy on the second, Daniel Heaps, Chris Blakely on the third. Our top 6, as it's just under 15 seconds now until lights out. A few more drivers actually opting for the medium compound tyre, so we'll have a chat about that during the race. But for now, we do in fact have 6 red lights on the gantry. Any moment now, our drivers will be getting away, and they do get away, and a fantastic getaway there for Andy Dorman. Losing out ever so slightly is Thomas Potter, losing a couple of positions actually. So hopefully he can pick up pieces from that one, but we head into the first corners now, and it is Thomas Potter versus, sorry, no, it's not there. It's Lee Piercy versus Andy Dorman. Then we have Daniel Heaps, P3 at the moment, has to go slightly wider into the corner. Might that open up the position to Christian? No, it doesn't. We have Lee Piercy leading this race, following on from Andy Dorman, as it seems to be a clean getaway for pretty much everyone involved. Our front runners from race 1 then in the action, in the absolute thick of it really, in the mid-pack. Now we're on board with Oliver Gibson, who we had a chat with just a few moments ago. He feels like he does have that pace as long as he keeps the nose clean, so let's see what he can do. He's saying he might have a chance to work together with our race 1 victor, Jack Smith. So let's see if he is able to do that. Jack, though, not having quite the start that he would have wanted, I suspect. He did say a good start was a little bit uncharacteristic for him, which I think is a bit harsh, but perhaps we're seeing that might be falling true there. A bit of contact between Daniel Heaps and Lee Piercy, but no matter, they seem to be carrying on just fine as we have cars heading down the back straight in packs of twos. So a clean getaway altogether. Henry, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I think overall that was mostly clean. I think Thomas Potter had a bit of a tough start there. I don't know what it was for him, but could have been a bit of wheel spin, could have been on the clutch for too long, but he dropped back a lot there. It was a bit of a struggle for him. But it was a similar thing for Jack Smith. I think he struggled, but he's managed to get back past Eric Axelson again, who had come up a couple of positions. So it'll be interesting to see. Of the front runners, though, Oliver Gibson has made the most progress, so I think we'll be seeing him coming up again. It's quite interesting to see, though, that Christian Gillian has stuck with that medium tyre, even after a bit of a tough race one. So potentially, the way he's driving the car, the soft might not be hanging on enough for him. So maybe that's why he's gone with the mediums, and maybe it's just what works better for him. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses throughout the race, but it will be giving him some good experiences for the feature race coming up later on when they have to run both tyres.
Yeah, it will. And as you mentioned, actually a couple of drivers opting for the medium tyre in race 2 here. We also have Sam Walton, who's just had an incident, I believe, has just dropped down the order, and also Alex Walker jumping onto that medium tyre. I have to. I'm not biased at all, but a good friend of mine, Alex Walker, actually just took race victory, was part of the team who took race victory in the Enduro KA series at Brands Hatch last weekend. So well done to him on that front. Let's see if he can make a bit of progress in this race in the mid-pack at the moment. We're on board still with Jack Smith, who has got Thomas Potter ahead of him and Eric Atkinson behind him as well. So two fairly formidable opponents there. It's certainly not where I would want to be out on a track, but he's doing well so far and has certainly got the pace. So let's see if he can make progress. As we've got an issue out at the front, that is, by the looks of things, that is Daniel. Sorry, I can't quite make it out there as it looks to be. We've got Daniel Heaps, that is, and Daniel Heaps and Lee Piercy having a bit of issues at the back at the end of the back straight. They are back underway as we do head through the final corner there, but that is not ideal this early on in the race.
Yeah, exactly, and all it's done is given Andy Dorman a huge lead at the moment. So he's looking to be in quite a comfortable situation now thanks to that incident, as well as Scott Bugner as well has got a good gap behind him as well. For the leaders from last race as well, this is quite ideal for them because it means that there's a couple extra drivers. They don't have to get past, as annoying it is for the drivers that have had an incident together. For the leaders, that's ideal. And I have no clue what happened between those two drivers, but it looks like throughout last sector, it's potentially not the best place to go side by side. And it's really easy to drop a wheel on that exit, which it looks like they might have done.
Oliver Gibson under a bit of pressure here from Christian Gillian in the dark liveried car there. He's going to have to back out of it here as Christian goes all guns blazing into the chicane there. Does win out in the end. But this is a fairly big train now, this battle for P3. An absolute fleet of BMW M3s here running down the back straight. Side by side goes Oliver Gibson and Christian Gillian. Chris Blakey rather is looking quite good through the left-hander. Sticks it down the inside, is going to have a slightly compromised run through the penultimate corner, but switches back as we head through the final corner. They do make contact together, and the Christian Gillian, the back end of his car, does step out. He kisses that gravel. That upsets the balance of the car. He has to drop out of it and tumbles all the way down to P9. Was fighting for the podium just a moment ago and now finds himself nearly out of the top 10. Just goes to show how you cannot let a single mistake creep in these fantastic pack battles.
Yeah, that's reverse grid racing for you. The absolute chaos, but it gives you some amazing racing, as we can see here. But that when he dipped a wheel off, he just lost so much momentum there, and it's just such a difficult thing as a driver when you get on the power and your wheels spin up and you're like, oh no, and the cars ahead of you just drive off into the distance. It wasn't much more I think he could have done there, but it was a difficult one. But you know, with that medium tyre, hopefully towards the end of the race he'll be able to catch back up again and get back into this pack, but we'll have to see. At the moment, though, it looks like Jack Smith is having a go at Thomas Potter again. It's really close racing still in this pack.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of these drivers squirming around a little bit. The back end's not wanting to comply all that much. 6 minutes into this 15-minute race. So a few of the drivers we chatted with reckon that the soft tyre should last a little bit longer into this race. So there should be a little bit more opportunity perhaps to push on, which might be why we are seeing that. But as you say, it's so frustrating as a driver when you lose that momentum, especially in a car like this. It's not like a modern touring car where you got all that turbocharged torque to kind of pick you back up. You know, these engines are all about revving them out and being in the right, being at the right moment, in the right gear, at the right time. And if you are having a little trip into the gravel, shall we say, it completely upsets all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Just that lack of momentum, it kills everything, and it's just, yeah, like I said, it's such a frustrating thing. But cutting back to the action now, I'm really surprised that Jack Smith is struggling to make an indent on the drivers in front of him. It looks like he's potentially been caught up a bit, but that pace from race 1 almost doesn't seem to be there. But it could just be the fact that he's caught up in traffic. But the more they stay in traffic as well, the more they're going to harm their tyres. They have to take different lines to try and get around the other drivers, and that's where the soft tyre can potentially become a bit of a hindrance when you have a bit more of that scrub, when you're trying to get into corners faster, to make moves, get on the power earlier to get an overlap and things like that. And that can be the point where you start to lose the tyre wear, and you start to bring the mediums back to where they could get to, and they'll be back up to pace. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the mediums end up, but I still think potentially might not be there. As we see, Oliver Gibson's just gone purple and set another purple first sector, so it looks like he's trying to push up the cars in front, but he's got a 3.8 second gap to bridge to these two leaders who are starting to have a scrap with themselves as well.
Yeah, as you say, we're about to hit the halfway mark in this race, and the leadership battle that we didn't get in race 1, we are going to get in race 2, and these two are no strangers to each other at this point. It is Scott Bugner and Andy Dorman, and through the final corner, the door was open to Scott Bugner. He says thank you very much and swoops on by. That is now Scott Bugner in the lead of this race, but for how long? Because lost a bit of momentum through the final corner. That allows Andy Dorman to come on side by side. The nose just edges out near enough in front. They are level pegging as we head into the first corner. Scott Bugner has the inside for the first corner, later on the brakes as well. He defends it for now, but I get the feeling that Andy Dorman is not giving this one up without a fight. Just mere tenths separate these two drivers. In terms of their best lap, it is Scott Bugner who has the stronger best lap overall. This was perhaps a move that was being threatened for a few laps then, and now we have seen the tides turn in this battle. As you say, Oliver Gibson, though, certainly still in the mix. Thomas Potter backing out of it here, so dropping down, which is a shame. Not sure what happened there. He had some great pace, did Thomas Potter, and was good on the defence. We saw just what he can do in the Cupra Leon Cup, and his continuing on that fight into the M3 Cup as well. But Andy Dorman then is also continuing on his fight. A few tenths of a second now separate these two drivers as he tries everything, using as much of the track as possible. Seeing a few cars actually going up all four wheels into the air there through that corner, which is not entirely forgiving on to the old chassis really, but it's good viewing nonetheless as we get a bit of a tank slapper in Daniel Heaps' car as he's trying to hunt down Thomas Potter, as looks to be, I thought that was contact, then looks like just a bit of lag in the session. Before we dive onto the back straight once again, as we do have Harry Ormerod now going side by side with Thomas Potter, slightly slower through the previous corner complex there and losing out as a result down the back straight. It is Thomas Potter and Daniel Heaps who swoop on by, heading in to the right-hander there.
Yeah, some great battles throughout. Wherever you are in the pack here, it's just amazing battles throughout. But one thing I'm looking at is that gap between Oliver Gibson and Andy Dorman. That has come down a lot. It was 3 seconds, I think, 2 laps ago. Each lap he's chipping away loads of time, especially with the battling that they had up at the front. And if you look at the pace that Oliver Gibson's running, his laps are almost quali pace. That's how much he's pushing. But as I say that as well, Jack Smith has just set the fastest lap of the race, so he's also pushing up forwards. He's managed to get past some of the drivers he was stuck behind, and the pace is coming to him now as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these gaps end up closing towards the end. We've got just under 5 minutes left.
We do, as Thomas Potter on the defensive there. Daniel Heaps has been struggling with the back end of his car for a little while now by the looks of things, as he did a very good job to catch it. Well, it looked like a lot of opposite lock was needed there, but he did catch it. It's looking a bit like Formula Drift almost in his car now. As you say, Jack Smith, Eric Atkinson now in the midst of battle, trying to work their way up through the field as well. Some decent pace. Let's see what he can do in the final few minutes, but we're looking at this great battle going on here between Daniel Heaps and Thomas Potter. Onto the back straight once again. Daniel seems to be really at the very kind of cutting edge of what his car can do. Seems to be as if he pushes it anymore, it's going to go very wrong indeed, as we see on board now with Jack Smith. Got actually Chris Blakey as a bit of a buffer between him and Eric Atkinson, so I assume Jack is going to be pushing on as much as possible to catch up to Oliver Gibson out in front, but Chris Blakey is making that as difficult as possible. As you say, some qualifying pace now on display here. Very traditional race reverse grid trope, really, isn't it, where you start to see as the packs start to separate, the really fast lap begins to show now. So seeing some great battling here once again. The run down to the first corner. Daniel Heaps having a look into the inside there, goes late on the brakes. Textbook move there, very nice to see. Nearly washes out too wide and finds himself on the inside of turn 2, but is lucky to catch it and just about keep it on the tarmac there as he gets ahead of Thomas Potter once again. We saw Harry Ormerod struggling just a few moments ago, but it seems to be he's doing okay now. He's back in the midst of this pack battle once again, and here we have Oliver Gibson was catching for a few laps, has now caught up to Andy Dorman. And for Scott Bugner, Andy Dorman was his worst enemy just a few laps ago. Now all of a sudden he's become his best friend, because now he could be the difference really between a secure P1 and something that might be a bit rockier really, because the battle is very much going in Oliver Gibson's favour so far, just with the amount of momentum he's got underneath. Really some great pace really. And now we see these two just a couple of tenths apart as we head into the penultimate corner.
Yeah, exactly. This battle is heating up to be something very exciting. But the thing is, Scott Bugner, like you said, he's loving this. He's loving seeing this battle in his rearview mirrors. He's just driving off as well. The pace he's been putting out as well has been really strong. He's starting to match Oliver Gibson and Jack Smith. But the more these two battle, the more it will bring in Jack Smith and Chris Blakey. They're going to be coming in as well, because they're setting the quick laps behind. But as we see that Oliver Gibson has managed to make a move, but Andy Dorman is not giving up just yet. Tried to get around the outside. Potentially a switchback here coming into the hairpin. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it looks like it was just about going to be on the cards there. It was Andy Dorman who tried to go back on the defensive. It didn't quite work out. Nearly goes too deep into the corner. In fact, both drivers at one point through that corner complex nearly doing that. But it's Oliver Gibson out in front for the moment. I must say, I really do quite like that pale blue and hot pink livery on this car. It works really well. Luckily, we've got a couple of drivers running with that livery in this series. And there is the other driver there, Jack Smith, who is trying to find a way past Andy Dorman. These two are going to want to work together. Now, we talked about that in the post-race one interviews, and now we're seeing that the opportunity for that to come into play really, as Oliver Gibson needs Jack Smith to occupy Andy Dorman really. Andy Dorman seemed to be dropping a little bit in terms of pace a few laps ago, but has very much solved that issue as we see him fighting two very formidable opponents here. In the meantime, Scott Bugner is 5 seconds out in front now. It's been a very nice run for him. He just needs to focus on bringing the car home really. Final minute on the clock in this race, as we have our three drivers fighting for the the bottom two steps on the podium. It's very much echoing race one really, isn't it? Here we had a very clear winner, or at least a clear leader as it was shaping up to be, but all the fighting was happening for the podium. Very important positions, of course. They give you a lot of points, and of course will be important for the upcoming races.
Yeah, I think it's just now going to be a matter of time for Jack Smith. He looks like he's got overwhelming pace over Andy Dorman, but it's just, is this last lap going to be enough for him to get through? There's not that many overtaking opportunities around this track, it's being such high speed, but can he make something work going into some of the heavy braking zones? We'll have to see, but he's just all over the back of him with those headlights on, trying to get in his mirrors. Maybe forcing a mistake, we'll have to see. It's just, yeah, like I said, a matter of time, but is there enough time for Jack Smith to get past?
There is certainly not a lot of time left. As you say, we head through one of the many pinch points on this circuit, and they do all make it through clearly. Andy Dorman very much on the defensive now. I think he's pretty much let Oliver Gibson go, and is just trying his best to hold on to that podium, holding on to an opportunity to have a chat with us, of course. Who wouldn't want that? As we head through the final few parts of the lap now, Andy Dorman still trying his utmost. There's contact between the two. Andy is just about able to keep hold of it as we go on board with Scott Bugner. He's had a great race so far. He weaves across the line in celebration, takes race 2 victory. Oliver Gibson will be bringing it home in P2 in the end, and it didn't look like it was going to happen at one point. Now it's going to be Andy Dorman P3, but all of a sudden, just at the last moment, it's Chris Blakey P4 takes a position away from Jack Smith. Jack Smith really losing out on that last lap. Eric Atkinson then P6, Josh Martin P7, Christian Gillian P8, Thomas Potter brings it home P9, making a position as to where he was a few laps to go. And then we have Daniel Heaps ending up with a top 10 finish, despite the amount of sliding he was contending with in that race. As we have the other cars coming home in just a moment as well. We have another look at our race of Victor Scott Buckner. We didn't see too much of him in the end in this race because he just made it work when it really mattered at the very end, and it was a great drive for him, a great drive as well for our other drivers on the podium, Oliver Gibson, Andy Dorman and Chris Blakey. Jack Smith as well, our top 5 in this race. So that brings an end to the second sprint race, the final sprint race of the evening, as we get ready for our 30-minute feature race coming up in just a few moments. But first, a message from